I believe that absolutely everyone who comes into our life in some meaningful way is a gift, that everyone who impacts us, good or bad, has something of value to offer. I know it might be difficult to hear that these people, these challenging people, might actually be something you want to embrace and celebrate, but trust me, it's worth it. I'm Nicola, and I struggled to accept this idea for ages. Every part of me did not want to accept the possibility that these obnoxious people actually had some benefit to me. But once I embraced this realization, it made it so much easier to deal with their toxic behavior and the negativity. So I'm going to share with you why I believe that difficult people are a gift, so you can stop fighting them and pushing them away and instead reap the benefits they offer. And then maybe with any luck, they'll disappear out of your experience altogether anyway. I believe that anyone we engage with in our lives is there for a reason. If they don't have anything to offer us, then we simply don't engage with them. They don't come into our experience. Now, I'm not talking about the lady at the post office or the guy at the checkout. They're just passing interactions. I'm talking about meaningful interactions, interactions that make us feel something. And when we feel something, it means there's something there for us, something for us to learn. And our loved ones can do this. They teach us through love and acceptance and kindness, but they also challenge us. And then difficult people come into our lives to teach us. And it's easy to dismiss them as being the problem in these situations, but they teach us through conflict, through anger, through challenging us, through toxicity, through negative behavior. We are being taught by these meaningful experiences that come into our lives. Let's illustrate this with an example, a situation that I've noticed with my husband. We've had a conversation that we've been struggling with for over 20 years over the course of our relationship. And the pattern goes, I say something and it triggers him into an emotional flashback. And I've got a whole video about what emotional flashbacks are and how to manage them if you want to watch that after this one. Then he is triggered and he turns the full force of his emotional response on me. I wonder what the heck just happened. And then we spend an inordinate amount of time and effort trying to dig ourselves out of this mess, often with little success, although we are getting better at it. And I recognized in this conversation that we've been having over and over a pattern, but a pattern of mine from my childhood to do with my mother. And he was playing it out for me, for my benefit. He was highlighting this pattern for me unknowingly. He was showing me this pattern so that I could look at it more closely. So what would happen in my childhood is that my mother would get triggered and go into an emotional flashback from her own traumas, and she would turn the full force of her emotional pain on me. And being very sensitive to that, I would feel the intensity of those emotions, and the emotional pain was almost unbearable. And it's one of the reasons I cut ties with her 25 years ago, because I just couldn't stand to keep being subject to that intense emotional pain. And so what I noticed was the same pattern. The same pattern was happening in this context. It was not about what my husband was doing necessarily. It was actually about how I was choosing to respond to what he was doing. It was what he did made me feel, or more accurately, how I chose to feel as a result of that situation. And it was my response to having the full force of someone's emotional demons being pointed at me. That was the response that I was experiencing through these conversations. And I don't like it. I don't like being the focus of someone's emotional demons. Now, in the case of my mother, I chose to walk away. I chose to cut ties with her and be estranged from her for over 20 years. But when she died in 2019, she was still just as willing to turn that emotional pain on me. So walking away didn't really change anything. It didn't fix that relationship. But with my husband, of course, I'm not choosing to walk away. I'm choosing to stay. But what we've been doing for the last 20 years obviously isn't working, diving into it and trying to sort the mess out. Not really working. It means I'm still being subject to that emotional demons, that force of that emotional demons. But I don't want to experience this again. I've had enough. I don't want to feel that anymore. But what I realized is that it's not up to him to change that, to stop me from being subject to his emotional demons. It's actually up to me. And that was what did my head in, to realize that I was getting this pattern from him in order for me to figure out how to do things differently. It's up to me to find a new way to experience this, a new way to understand what's going on for me, to ask myself questions like, what can I do differently? How can I see this differently? How can I have a different experience in this situation? And so I've been trying different things. Walking away isn't an option, but just diving headfirst into it hasn't been working for 20 years, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And so the last time this happened, I was able to say to him, because he is now aware of emotional flashbacks and being triggered, I could say to him, I think you're having a flashback right now, and I'm not really enjoying this conversation, so I'm going to walk away, and when you are feeling better and you are no longer triggered, come back to me and we can pick up this conversation. And he was actually able to do that. So we are making progress. But the point is that our experience of another person is entirely for our benefit. It means that absolutely everyone is a gift. Everyone we engage with has something priceless to offer us, but only if we choose to see it, and we have to do the work to find it. And it's taken me 20 years to see this pattern with my husband. So we have to do the work to see it. We have to actually be willing to dive in and say, okay, what's actually going on here under the surface? When people challenge us, it's so much easier for us to blame them, to write them off, to say, wow, they got out of the wrong side of bed today. But when we do that, we miss the gold, because what they're actually doing for us is they are shining a light on something in us that is out of balance, that is an issue that we can work on and resolve, something we can learn. And to look at this head on, to face up honestly to what's going on in us, takes incredible strength and courage. But can we choose to see their purpose in our lives differently? Can we choose to see that they came into our lives in a different way, for a different reason than just to annoy us? We can ask ourselves questions like, what does this remind me of? Where have I experienced this before? Or what could this person be possibly trying to help me see or learn? And like I was doing, what can I do differently? How can I choose to see this in a new way to help me have a new experience? Something else I've noticed in my own experience is a sequence of customer service interactions that were less than great. I reached out to these companies in a wide variety of fields and for different reasons, with a very clear request of something that I wanted from them. But instead of responding and saying, yes, we can do that, what I got back instead was either something that didn't even answer my question, so they didn't pay attention to what I'd asked for and they didn't actually answer the question that I'd asked very clearly, or they spent a lot of time and effort telling me that I was wrong and that what I was asking for was not the right thing to be asking for, or I had my facts wrong, or whatever it was. And I realized that this string of interactions, it was definitely multiple interactions, was actually highlighting for me my issue around not being listened to. When people don't listen to me, I get very triggered, and it's something that I'm working on. And so I could choose to respond to this in two different ways. I can choose to try and go back to them, ask the question again over and over, try and explain to them how I'm not wrong. I can go into this conversation around it, or I can choose to walk away from that relationship. I can say, I don't feel like buying anything from that company anymore. And that tends to be our response. We say, okay, how much do I value this relationship? Is it worth the effort? Do I actually try and sort this out and clear this up? Or do I just walk away from this? And that's often the choice we have. But the realization I had was that there was a third part of this, and it had nothing to do with what I did or didn't say to these companies. What it was for me to look at that issue of not being listened to and say, can I change what it means to me to be not listened to recognize that these companies were highlighting for me the fact that I am triggered when I'm not listened to. So can I find a way to look at that experience differently? Can I shine a light on that issue for myself to see if there is a way that I can be, that I can see, that I can choose to see things differently, to have a different experience around this issue? And that is the value that they were providing to me in that circumstance. So the value that difficult people and interactions provide is manifold. Firstly, it provides us with self-awareness. It helps us see our triggers and our emotional reactions. And journaling can be a great way to unearth some of these reactions. And I've got guide with over 100 journaling prompts if you want to use this to try and understand better what your triggers and reactions are from these difficult interactions. It also gives us clarity around our values, our goals, and our preferences. What is important to us, what is not important to us. It helps us figure out our priorities. where our priorities lie, where we want to spend our energy, where we don't want to spend our energy. It also helps us create and maintain boundaries to actually say, I'm not willing to accept that particular thing into my experience. And I've got a whole video that takes you through why boundaries are so important, what they really are, so that you actually prioritize them and are willing to make those boundaries and set those boundaries in these difficult situations. And these difficult interactions help us practice that skill. It also helps us practice the skill of communication, of making sure that we are communicating ourselves effectively to others, but also that we are hearing what others are trying to say to us. And nonviolent communication is an absolutely fantastic way of improving your communication skills in these difficult situations. And I've got a step-by-step guide to that you might want to download. These difficult interactions also help us with growth. They help us to grow personally. They encourage us to develop emotional strength and resilience, the ability to bounce back from these challenging situations and get back on the horse and keep going and not be so thrown by them. It helps us develop patience and flexibility and mindfulness, the ability to be present with what's happening for us. All of these things feed into our self-mastery, our ability to manage ourselves more effectively. It also helps with compassion because these interactions encourage us to develop empathy, to understand the other person's experience, to put ourselves in their shoes, to see things from new perspectives, to be compassionate towards the other people in these interactions. And compassion in this case is understanding with love, understanding what's going on for them and being willing to accept that and work with them to try and figure things out. And the thing is, if you welcome these challenging interactions, if we actually say when someone does something to us that we don't like, instead of saying, no, go away, I don't want that experience, or writing them off, it's actually saying, yippee, an opportunity to learn and grow, bring it on. It takes the sting out of their actions. It drains their negativity away because suddenly we're no longer fighting it and pushing it away. We're actually welcoming it and saying, yes, I want this experience because I know it's actually going to help me. And suddenly there's so much less power in what they did. And gratitude is a great way to develop this. And I've got a guide with a bunch of gratitude prompts if you want to start using gratitude to help you understand the value that these difficult interactions are actually bringing into your life. But the absolute kicker of the value that difficult people bring into our experience is the fact that if we can commit, put the effort in, choose to learn the lesson that they are trying to teach us, they will either change or they will just leave. And that is absolute magic. So now you can see why I think that everyone who comes into our life is an absolute gift and how you can turn the most difficult challenges into something of benefit to you. So can you reflect on the difficult people in your life and find the hidden goal? Can you choose to see the next challenging interaction as an opportunity to learn and grow? And to understand why it's not life letting you down when you feel disappointed, watch this video next. Got questions? Comment below and I'll see you in the next one.